All right, guys, bang, bang. I've got Eric here. Thank you so much for doing this, sir.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
For sure. We're going to try to make this one of the most action packed, actionable, and information filled episodes that we've done. Eric is a wealth of knowledge. So let's get into it. Maybe let's just start with your background and kind of what you've done up until today.
Yeah, sure. So I'll try to keep it brief. So name is Eric Sue, and I mainly kind of hover in the marketing world. So I got a podcast called Marketing School, another one called Leveling Up. And then I have a couple businesses. One's a ad agency, and then one is a software company called ClickFlow. I have operators running those businesses. And then other than that, I just, got a book coming out called Leveling Up. I just try to play the game of life. And honestly, used to come from an esports background. I was just like, man, I just need to find something where I feel like I'm playing a game every day. And honestly, it's just business and creating stuff. So, yeah, that's my background.
I love it. That's a great way to live life. As I was thinking through what could we possibly talk about, because there's so much stuff, I ultimately settled on you've shared a million ideas publicly, and I figured I would just throw them out there at you, and we can kind of riff on them. The first one I want to go through is SEO. You have created probably more content than almost anyone I know on this topic. And you have a recent tweet thread that says over 1 million blog posts are published daily. Google is shrinking organic results. SEO is harder, but that's fine because you're strong. Here are a few creative things you can do to drive your organic traffic up. And the first suggestion is to buy other websites. Talk through why that's such a good idea.
Yeah, so maybe I'll rewind real quick just to paint some context for people around SEO. So I think a lot of people right now, especially in tech, they do demand generation and all that, and it's like demand generation is just running Facebook ads or Google ads, and there's actually a lot more than that when it comes to marketing. And so I think SEO is one of the most unfair advantages you can establish. Because what happens is if you have a lot of traffic come to your website, let's say 100,000 or so, you can retarget those people later. You follow them around with those ads. You can do a lot more, right? And then you can plug in, other stuff like customer data platforms, email, like all these tools, that you have access to, and you don't have to keep, paying these big app platforms, and you're kind of at their whim, right? If they decide to ban you, they ban you. So anyway, SEO, the two most important things still to this day are content and links, right? You still have to have a lot of great content, a lot of links. And some people that, they make so much money, some of my buddies, they make so much money, they don't know what to do. They don't want to pay taxes on it. So they just deploy the money back into content and links, and they just make even more money, right? That's the game of SEO. You just keep compounding. It's just like investing in stocks. It's just like putting money into crypto. It's the same deal. So when I talk about buying websites, the problem with SEO is that it takes too long. People aren't patient, right? It's like an 18 to 24 month, probably 36-month journey to start to see some good stuff happen. When I took over my company, Single Rain, the ad agency, we were doing maybe 4,000 visits a month, which was nothing. Now, we're up to 320,000, which is pretty decent for a marketing website. But we took those tactics and I started another blog with a friend. We went from 0 to 4 million visits a month, right? And so it's the same stuff. And so, but instead of waiting 0 to 36 months or so, or 36 months, we'll just call it that, go and look at other websites that have a good, in SEO, it's called a domain authority. So, you're scored on a scale of 1 to 100, 0 to 100. You want to buy a site with, maybe 80 plus domain authority. And ideally, you could check out some of these brokerage websites like flippa.com or FE International. There's a lot of these brokerage websites, and you can say, you know what? I don't want to wait. I'm just going to go buy a website. And, when I buy the website, I'm just going to go, create a bunch of new content. It's going to rank. And then I'm going to be making a boatload more money. And I can use this website as an acquisition system that will pay me in perpetuity and get me more leads, instead of saying, I'm just going to go to LinkedIn, Facebook, or Google and try to buy more leads.
What do you see people monetizing with, right? So they go and they buy a website. They've already got great domain authority. Is this they're monetizing through ads on the website? They're selling products, a mixture? How do you see that working?
Yeah, you're looking to arbitrage here, right? Because you're looking for websites that have good traffic that are not monetizing the right way, in my opinion. Like if you have a lot of traffic and you're just monetizing off of ads, you're probably not thinking it through, and you're probably just bored of the website. So what I would do is I would reach out to these people and ask if they're interested in partnering up, right? So you might hit them up on LinkedIn. You might go, find their email addresses. You'll find their contact information, and then just hit up a bunch of them and say, a certain percent are going to respond to you, and then instead of saying I'm going to invest in your company, people get kind of like, they don't really want to talk to you if you say that, but I'm going to invest different story. Or sorry, I want to partner with you, different story. And then that's how you get the conversation going.
Got it. Another suggestion in this thread was to monitor your decaying content and then update it. Explain that.
Yeah. So what tends to happen over time is if you don't tend to your garden, right, things start to get unruly, right? You know, the kale starts to go everywhere, the carrots, and I don't have a garden, I'm just making things up. But, you know, the point is content tends to decay over time if you're not upgrading it. So one example of this is Wikipedia. So Wikipedia, they had this page on Abraham Lincoln over the years. Like it first started out with 5,000 words, then it was 8,000 words, and now it's like 15,000 or 20,000 words or so. Point is, people are constantly updating the content over time, and Google likes freshness, right? We just use Google as the main search engine. But also, like if you take a look at Yelp or you take a look at TripAdvisor, you have a lot of UGC, user-generated content. They're constantly, updating it for the website. That's how they get stronger and stronger. It just kind of defends their kind of organic search moat. So what you could do is you can use whatever analytics tool platform you have and just look at your top posts over time and see if they're losing traffic, right? We actually have a tool that's out there for free. If you just Google ClickFlow content decay, it's totally free and it'll actually monitor like when you're losing like 20%, 80% of your traffic. The whole idea here is that if you have like a top 10 or top 20 list of posts, because 80-20 rule, the top 20 will drive the 80% of traffic. You don't want to lose that traffic. So what you're doing ideally is maybe you're adding, maybe a paragraph or even more content to these, every couple months, and you're tending to your garden. People just like create content. The problem right now with SEO is like create a million plus blog posts a day, and we're just going to leave it, right? It's like you don't buy a car and then you drive it for 2 weeks and you're done, right? It's just like you want to make the most of it.
Absolutely. The next suggestion is to test titles, tags, meta descriptions to drive a higher click-through.
Yep. So, when you think about those of you that run ads or like you're testing email subject lines, when you're running ads, right, you're testing like on Google, for example, you're A/B testing titles and a description. Or if you're testing, email subject lines, you want to see which one gets a higher open rate, right? So same deal when it comes to SEO. What you want to think about is, if I have a title, marketing blog versus like best marketing blog, updated for 2020 and beyond or whatever. The second one is probably going to get a higher click-through rate. And so what you want to be doing is, you can use a tool like Google Search Console, which is completely free. And then you look at your content that has this is getting a little into the weeds, but it has a high impression count, but a low click-through rate. So, Google's showing your post a lot, but you as a marketer, whoever you are, the site owner, you're not doing a good job from a marketing perspective, because marketing's job is to bring people to the point of sale, to get people to click, right? So it's the same deal. Like if you're doing title testing for ads or emails, like why aren't you doing it for SEO if you're getting good traffic? And so same deal with ClickFlow. We created a solution to make it easier. I'm not here to pump that. I mean, just, Google Search Console, you can do it completely for free. So. Absolutely.
What about using frequently asked questions, that schema, as a way to better rank?
Yeah. So there's actually, so what's happening right now with Google is, they have to please their shareholders, right? So they actually removed that whole, don't be evil thing. So they're making the ads look like search results, and, they're making on certain search engine result pages, like it's hard to see the organic results period. There's like all these snippets and stuff. So, what you want to be doing when it comes to FAQ schema. So FAQ schema is like, if I type in, Anthony Pompliano or, I don't know, wardrobe or something like that, right? So people might have an FAQ like, what does Pomp put in his hair or whatever, right? There's like a bunch of other questions. So that pops up as a box. And that box, imagine if you're seeing a box on a search engine result page, you're going to be more likely to click that because it's taking up so much real estate. So if you want to implement FAQ schema, talk to your web developer. I would just type in FAQ schema plugin for whatever CMS or content management system that you're using, and then boom, you have FAQ schema for your website. You're going to get a higher click-through rate, hopefully. And there's a lot of different ways to do it, but I would just hand it off to whoever your developer or your engineer is. And then if you have a WordPress site, there's a lot of WordPress plugins for it.
Absolutely. So switching gears, you had this tweet about don't ask people for coffee or to pick their brain until you've deposited in the relationship bank. And I found that concept of a relationship bank really interesting. Explain that.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, and I've done this in the past. I mean, I'm sure, you have a lot of people that reach out to you asking you to just get coffee or talk to you for 5 to 10 minutes. And, I actually put this on LinkedIn too. Like, I kind of exaggerate. I was like, it's downright offensive, right? Because you want to, stir people up a little bit. But I found what's worked best for me, because like, instead of asking people, I'm going to pay $5 for like your most valuable asset, your time, it's not an equal trade-off, right? But if I am looking at your tweets, for example, looking at what you're interested in, and I offer to help you, maybe I make it, you're like, oh, I'm looking to hire some engineers or whatever. It's like, hey, here are 3 engineers that I know. I happen to have a recruiting agency. Boom. I've actually helped you. I've looked at your stuff. That's a little bit, that's saying something. And I've actually gone out and done the work. I'm not making you think about anything. And I'm just going to, the concept of I'm going to make little deposits every day. Maybe I want to get on your radar, whatever it is exactly. And then at some point, I'm going to make a withdrawal, right? I'm not going to make a big withdrawal, but my whole thing is like, I just like, making more deposits more than anything. So I have a margin of safety. So when I make an ask, it's like not that big of a thing. And I'll give you some examples. I mean, there's 2 people I'm thinking of right now. One guy actually works for VaynerMedia now. When he wanted to work for me, he wrote an 8,000 word blog post, right? The guy went to Michigan, and he was like, yeah, here's what I would do. Here's what I would do. Here's what I do. And I'll tell you what, I'll do it for you for free for a month. Right. And I'm just like, dude, this guy gets me. And, guy turns out to be an all-star. And then he's working for VaynerMedia now. And another guy, he's like, hey, look, I follow your podcast. I'll write some emails for you to help you get more conversions. And I'll do it for you completely for free for a month. Like, not only have you looked at my stuff, you put together a strategy, and then you said you'll do the work, and then you said you'll do it for free for a month, and you have no ask. Like, that's the dream. So that's way better than like asking for coffee, especially if you're like trying to ask Warren Buffett for his time, right? Which you probably won't get. So.
Absolutely. Another idea is this idea of you don't actually have to talk to the end customer in order to get the customer insights in every situation. Sometimes you do have to talk to them, but other times you don't. What are some of the hacks there?
Yeah, so I did I did 2 podcast episodes. One was with the Levels CEO, Sam Korkos. And what was fascinating to me was when I opted into, so it's like a patch you use to kind of monitor your metabolic state. But he was like, hey, let's get on a 45-minute call. I was like, oh, damn, this guy's doing customer development. And when I got on the call with him, I was like, hey, tell me, like, how many calls have you done? He's like, over 1,000. I was like, holy crap, right? I was like, I don't think I could ever do that. That's a lot of patience, right? And that's like, that's great. But anyway, I can't do it. So I talked to the CEO of Superhuman, Raul, and he was like, look, man, like I met up with like maybe 30 people, 40 people or so in San Francisco. We had coffee, whatever. And then there's the coffee thing. And then I guess it's equal trade. But then he was like, you know what? I just made a simple landing page using like Wix. And then, whoever wanted to sign up for the tool could sign up. But then right after they signed up, they would ask them, hey, like, what's the worst, like your biggest frustration with email? Like, what would you like to see? Right. And then he'll get a ton of responses, and he'll just cherry pick the ones he likes. And so he was basically doing customer development at scale because he was getting automated responses. He was cherry picking, but he was just responding really quick to people. And that helped guide his customer development. So there's 2 ways to do it. You can do it I love what Sam Korkos did with Levels, and then I would actually prefer Raul's because I'm lazy. So
absolutely. Well, and this feeds into the next idea, which is basically kind of like creating the ideal client profile, right? So whether it's more of like a retail consumer or it's a agency based client, it feels like knowing who you want to work with is almost as important as knowing who you don't want to work with.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's actually a lot of good ideal client profile templates out there. But I mean, so for our SaaS company, as an example, we might have people that are, you have people that are mid-market companies, you have enterprise, and then we try to stay away from small business. But, maybe for mid-market, they're doing maybe 10 million annual recurring revenue. Enterprise, probably, let's just say, hundreds of millions or billions plus. And then they have very specific things they're looking for. Maybe enterprise levels, maybe they're looking for business intelligence more so than like, different features for the mid-market, right? So I'm just saying that you really have to understand kind of who you're going after. And here's the thing. I literally just got off a podcast with Justin Kahn from Twitch, and I asked him about his failures, and here's what he said. So Twitch sold to Amazon for $1 billion, great exit. So he was like, the common thing with all my failures was that I didn't do enough I didn't do enough customer development. I didn't try to focus on one segment. I tried to do maybe two, three, two, like that's too many segments, right? And that led to, trying to go all over the place and serve everyone. So if you're starting out, focus on one. And then if you're going to, at a certain point, you're doing this for 6 to 12 months, you'll understand who your ideal client profile is. I think what we did as an agency a couple of years ago was helpful because we looked at, the lifetime value of each customer. And then we just saw that like, oh, it turns out that we serve SaaS companies the best. They stay the longest and they pay the most, and they're like not a pain in the ass. So we decided to focus on being a SaaS marketing agency versus everything else, which is kind of all over the place on the map.
It also creates this level of like, I want to be in the exclusive club. I want to be accepted into your customer base, right? Which is like a weird dynamic, but it definitely creates this this FOMO feeling a little bit.
Yeah, you got the power. I mean, it's I think you're creating the right incentives because it's like people want people that specialize. You don't want to go to you want to go to like an orthopedic surgeon for like very specific things, or like an eye doctor, right? You don't want to go to like a general doctor. So.
For sure. You mentioned a couple of really great entrepreneurs. And one of the things that almost every entrepreneur has that is successful is an advisory board. I've seen you talk quite a bit about the importance of a really strong, successful advisory board. How do you think about that?
Yeah. So I think earlier in my career, like I would read a lot of books and then people would be talking about, peer groups and advisory boards. So one thing I did, I'm trying to make this practical for everyone. If you Google mastermind talks, dinner PDF, you'll be able to find a PDF. And what I did was I gathered like-minded marketers because I didn't have a business at the time. I would have them come over to my place. I'd buy dinner, and then we put people in the hot seat. I put together like an agenda and everything, so people talk about the latest marketing tactics and strategies. Hot seat, one thing they're struggling with, and we all kind of just help each other, right? You have a little mini community there, and then as you level up through your career, then as you get stronger, then I would say there's a lot of different peer groups, right? There's Entrepreneurs Organization, there's YPO. And I'm part of both. I love both of those. And you get to basically have like a mini board of directors, right? So I remember when I first joined EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, I was 27 at the time. Everyone else was like 35 plus, and they had a way more experience than I did. And what you realize is that you don't know what you don't know, right? And so this group, what they do is they'll, like, one guy shared like his cash flow forecast with me like 10 weeks. I was like, what is that, right? And then they're just, what happens is I'll share a struggle and then everyone else will share an experience. They won't give direct advice. And that to me is a little advisory board there because I'll know what to do next based on what I think I should do. I'm not taking any advice. So that's one example of advisory boards. And obviously I think, when it comes to, I right now I'm on a couple of advisory boards for like some companies out there. And, in some cases, they're just asking me for advice maybe once a month. Like we'll get on a call for like an hour. In other cases, I might be a little more involved. But that's another example. You might, give a person maybe like, 0.5%, 1%, 2% equity. And, you're on their advisory board, or you have them join yours.
Absolutely. Now, the reason why everyone is obviously listening to this is the next question, which is how to become famous on Instagram. Everyone wants to be famous on Instagram. I saw that you guys did a podcast episode on this that was really, really interesting based on kind of all the different hacks and tips. Maybe walk us through kind of how you guys think about that strategy.
Yeah, so this is, we have a podcast called Marketing School. I do it with another marketer named Neil Patel. To be fair, my Instagram isn't super huge. It's like 24K. He's at like a 200K or so. So neither of us are Instagram famous, but we know a lot of people that are, and we know what they do. The one thing that we found to work really well is just siphoning off of someone else's audience. So it's like, if let's say I'm at 24K, what I would do is I might reach out to someone that's at 50K or 75 or 100K. I don't want to go too big because it's too far up, right? Ideally what you might want to do is, if you're at 24K, but you have some other assets that you think might be able to help that person, again, you want to make it an equal trade. So I might say, hey, look, I have 24K here, but I might have a podcast over here. That's the angle. And then, let's go ahead and do a live on Instagram, and boom, all the people coming that's seeing the live, now they now know you by association, and you get bigger faster. Giveaways always work well. I think you're going to get a lot of spam and a lot of kind of people that are just there to be tire kickers though. But you can use a tool like King Sumo giveaways for that. But we haven't been super big on trying to grow our IG fast, just because it's not, both of us, we serve kind of B2B audiences. So, we'll let it grow organically and then see where it goes. But, if you do have other assets, like an email list, that is like an unfair advantage. So, leverage that when you can, especially for growing a podcast, by the way. If you have an email list, dude, unbeatable.
Absolutely. And one of the things you do in emails, obviously, is you write copy. I've seen you talk about maybe more landing page copy, but it applies to emails as well. Most people write copy trying to be interesting or trying to kind of catch people's attention, kind of clickbait, right? Is the terminology. You're much more focused on writing copy that highlights you can solve somebody's problem.
Right.
What's the nuance or what's the difference there?
Yeah, I think for me, I just realized that, whenever I try to sound interesting, I end up sounding like an idiot. So what I try to do instead is I just try to be helpful. Like that's the only thing that's been, that's the one thing that's been super helpful to me throughout the years. It's just, if someone needs something, I'll be out there. Like if I find an interesting insight, I'm going to try to share it with people. And like, I'll always ask people like, what do you need exactly? What's the number one thing? Right. And I've natural, like that wasn't natural to me, but I've learned to make it more of a natural habit. So, when I think about like, what's something of value I can post out there, that lens is a lot more helpful than, hey, I want to create some content and I want to be famous. I think chasing status more so than trying to be helpful is not the best game. So.
Absolutely. And I guess when you're writing that, how do you kind of make sure that you're actually articulating that you can solve the problem? Are there certain frameworks or tests that you run or anything that you say, like, I know that I'm hitting on the right spot rather than just, hey, I just wrote an email to a bunch of people. I sent it and, cross my fingers and hope it works.
Yeah. I'll talk about this in the context of maybe like a Facebook ad. Just so I think it covers more. So if you want more tactical stuff, I think, there's a book called Breakthrough Advertising, which is now you can buy for $125 or so. I bought it for $600 because it was out of print at the time. Highly recommended. It really taps into human psychology. And the whole skill of copywriting has not changed. We all still have the same needs. There's another book called The 16-Word Sales Letter written by this guy who's a copywriter for Agora, which is, they do over 1 billion a year, and they're primarily like a financial newsletter. So that's kind of tactical on that side. For me, what I do is from Breakthrough Advertising, there's this framework that I use. So it's UPSYD. So it's UPSYD. And I got this from these digital marketer podcast, and it's basically from the book. So basically you're taking a prospect from unaware to problem aware to solution aware to aware of your solution. So that's the why. And then you give them a deal, right? So a video ad can do that, but also a long form Facebook ad can do that too, right? And what I'm looking to do when I do that is, what can I do? What kind of story can I tell exactly? And also I'll run the copy through a sentiment analysis tool as well. You can use Grammarly. It'll tell you if your content's positive or not, but I use a sentiment analysis tool as long as it's positive, because generally you want your content to be positive, then, we're good to go. But for me, I'm just looking to say like, one key, like, here's how you do modern day SEO, and then boom, 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 here's like a tweet storm. And I'll give a bunch of tactics, right? Like that's what's worked best for me. And yeah, I think that's the framework I use.
You also have talked a bunch about kind of people who are building companies being vision driven. I think a lot of people say in a pitch deck or something like, hey, here's our vision for the company, but it's not so much a measurable vision. In the tweet, you talked about Microsoft saying we want a computer on everyone's desk, right? Or SpaceX saying we want to get to Mars, and something that you can kind of tangibly measure against. Talk a little bit about how you've seen people do this well.
Yeah. So I think when it comes to, for me, vision, mission, values, like that stuff used to be like, that's so intangible. Like, what are you supposed to do with that? And then you realize the vision is what matters is the people, right? But if you want to keep the people together at the company, you got to have a great culture. And how do you have a great culture? We need to have a unifying vision, right? And so, whether it's, we want to put a PC on everyone's desk, or we want to organize the world's information. That's something that's motivating and something that people can wake up for every day, right? And I remember Howard Marks from Activision. So he's got an interesting story, but he's like, look, we want to. His vision is we're gonna help all entrepreneurs, right? And he's like, well, you say it's broad, but like that's what a vision is. Like it's not supposed to be attainable, but it's supposed to be motivating and inspiring. So I used to have like very specific numbers, like before I learned all this, I was like, oh, the goal is to make it $100 million company. Like, that's not motivating at all. So now, I got the book coming out. I'm like, oh, dude, you know what's easier? Like, my mission is to level up the world because I just like learning and I like teaching. And because I do that, that's led to all these other opportunities, right? And it just feels right. And so when you tell when people are trying to join your company, like, what's the vision? Well, the vision's to level up the world. Like, you can wake up and say, let's do it, right? Versus like, oh, it's to be $1 billion company, right? That's like not as motivating.
Absolutely. You've talked a lot about this idea that people get distracted in today's digital internet-based world. There's notifications, there's sounds, there's flashing lights. You go to a website and literally it's covered with ads. Like, everything is distracting. But you don't necessarily think that that's the worst thing in the world. There's an opportunity to turn that distraction into a productive skill. Explain what you mean by that.
Yeah. So I think okay, so as an example, one of the, I don't have many notifications on my phone, but one notification I have on, or I had on, was Twitter, right? So let's say someone James Clear or Naval Ravikant, they tweet. And one of the things you do if you want to grow on Twitter is you respond immediately as the first one, right? As you know. And so that to me is a helpful distraction because that's helping me, build relationships perhaps. And, the other notifications I get, let's see, what else do I get? So there's that one. I don't have my message notifications on. I'm trying to think what else. It's kind of escaping my mind right now. Maybe we can come back to this one. Maybe it'll just hit me.
Okay. The other thing that I think is really interesting is you've been running Twitter ads. And when I came on and talked to you last time, it was kind of this idea like nobody's really running Twitter ads. So like maybe there's a mispricing there. How have you thought about that kind of experiment and what have you learned?
Yeah, I'll just talk about mispricing in general. I think so Twitter, I think, is very underpriced attention because we're spending like $100 a day. We should probably be spending more, but we're just promoting certain blog posts. And so there's a very big stock exchange that's one of the my ad agency's clients, and they saw a Twitter ad that I had out that was mainly targeting SaaS people, and the email thread read was like, it was like, why aren't we getting this fire? Like we want this, right? And that led to a whole upsell conversation, and led to the contract getting bigger. And not only that, we got a ton of qualified SaaS leads from that. And so it just makes a lot of sense because some of the smartest people in the world are hanging out on Twitter, right? And so whether I want to target e-commerce or SaaS or other or even you had Andrew Wilkinson on this podcast, he targets VCs on there to get them to sell dead zombie companies to him, right? So I think the attention's heavily underpriced, and he doesn't spend that much either. And talking to him, and so I think that's a great example. But I think with upcoming book too, I'm like, okay, what's underpriced? You know what? The gaming influencers out there that have a couple 100,000 or millions of subscribers, I'm like, dude, I'm talking to all these agencies right now. Like the CPMs or the cost per 1,000 impressions to try this, like, I'm like, man, I should just, if it works, I'll do this all day. Because if you look at the Tim Ferriss book, he really targeted mommy bloggers, a lot of bloggers in the early days. And I think it was underpriced attention, got them to help promote. That's what I think happened. But same deal here, right? So I think if you think you have a good, if you're good at sniffing out the underpriced attention, go all in on it, right? So.
Absolutely. You've got a book that's coming out called Leveling Up. Talk a little bit about why write a book. You've got all these great skills in terms of reaching people on digital platforms. Some people would say, hey, a book's pretty antiquated. What was the thought process there? Yeah.
So, wow, there's a lot in there. So the reason I decided to do the book is not to try to make money. And by the way, like I could have gotten an advance from it. We went through this hybrid publishing model where I have control of the rights, and yet it's going to be going through a publisher. I can do all the marketing stuff I want to do, like book funnels and things like that. Happy to talk about it. And I was like, look, I think this message needs to get out there because, there's 3 billion gamers in the world. And, me growing up, I spent so much of my time playing, poker, first-person shooter games, a lot of MMORPGs, and I'm like, look, my parents used to look down on me, my friends used to look down on me, saying it's a waste of time and all that. But I'm like, the time I spent, all those skills are actually just like sports. They're a gateway into the real world. Yes, you are like when you're playing a game, it is kind of a shadow world, but take those skills, translate it into the real world. And honestly, every day right now, Pomp, like I feel like I'm playing a game. Like I can do podcasts, I can work on this, I can work on that. I'm just jumping around. It's just so fun. And so that's why I decided to do it. Hopefully if you can, change a few people's lives, that's great. But I think it's the message that's more important to me than anything. So hopefully, we're able to spread the message. And again, it's not to try to make money, not to try to, didn't make any money off of it out the gate. And then what I would say too is, if you want to talk about promotion, happy to talk about it. But
I do. What's a book funnel?
So a book funnel is, and I'm sure you've seen this. There's a lot of people running Facebook ads right now, or maybe even Google ads. They'll be like, hey, Pomp, like I'll give you my book free, but all you have to do is pay shipping. What happens when you do that is you put your credit card information in. No, the next page, you know what? I got some other stuff to sell you. And usually the conversion rate on the next page is around 10%. And so if I have a book, maybe you might say, oh my God, Eric, you're losing money because you're just like, you're giving the book away for free and you're shipping it and all that. But my next page might have an offer that's maybe $30 or $100 or so. Let's say it's $100 converts at 10%. There's your $10 right there. You're basically when you have a book funnel, you have more control. You can actually make money on that initial campaign, and then you can sell whatever you want in the back end when they're on your email list. That's the entire play. That's what a lot of these internet marketers have been doing. And if you want to start a book funnel, there's software called ClickFunnels, and they literally have a template that you can use to build a book funnel. So that's why we went hybrid, because after we make this initial push, we're probably going to switch and really use our marketing prowess.
If you guys are so good at doing this, which obviously you are, why even mess around with any of the book publishers? You didn't get an advance, and it sounds like you have a ton of flexibility. What was the advantage to working with them?
Yeah, so there's this book I really love called The Coaching Habit, and my publisher is called Page Two, and so I just wanted to work with them, and the guy that wrote The Coaching Habit, Michael, he was like, yeah, they're a pleasure to work with. They know exactly what to do. So they were basically telling me what I needed to do. Like I got all this stuff done with the book. They handled the cover. Like I have these badges in the book. It just looks good, right? Like the process was iron tight. Cause I just didn't want to deal with all this other stuff. So the process was locked in, and they have their sales team working on it right now. They're like, and so for winter, they're like, the book is going to be our lead book. I was like, well, what does that mean? And they're like, oh, it's going to be the main thing we focus on. So I was like, okay, that's exciting. So there's this element of the book will, this pre-COVID, I was like, okay, this book's going to appear in the airplane bookstores. Not airplane bookstores, the airport bookstores. They're like, yeah, we're going to sell it to Barnes and Noble and all that. All that's gone now. So, but the problem is I signed a contract already. So that additional benefit of, their sales team helping with all these physical locations has kind of diminished, but that was one of the major benefits in addition to the process.
Got it. And so what else are you guys doing kind of under your own control for somebody who's listening who wants to launch a book? You've got the book funnel idea, which is fantastic. Anything else that you guys are doing that you think will be very valuable?
Yeah. In terms of promoting a book?
Yes.
Yeah. So the things I honed in on, we talked about the gaming influencer. So, we use a tool called Follower Wonk, which can search people's Twitter bios. And a lot of these gaming people, they put their emails in the bio, and they always use like a .gg, at the end of the email. So we found a bunch of emails through that, and then just kind of sorted by number of followers. And then we use another tool called Tensor Social to find a bunch of gaming influencers. You can basically search for the industry and then sort by engagement rates, and then you can actually find their emails as well and export it. So there's that. And then we're going to be using Facebook ads, and then driving them to a contest as well. So for gamers, we have a contest where it's like you can win a new Alienware computer, a new gaming chair, new headphones, and all that. And for the main entry, it is to basically maybe it's subscribe to our YouTube channel or get on our email list or whatever. You can give like 3 points here, 2 points here, whatever. And so hopefully that the contests tend to work really well, but we're also giving away, the first chapter of the book away for free. And then the final thing I'll say is podcast tour. That's the biggest thing, right? So that's part of the reason why I'm getting on a bunch of podcasts right now. That pushes books because naturally, people are listening to this podcast for you, but also like whatever the guest tends to say, if they align with that message, then great. So
absolutely. If people buy the book, what are they going to learn in it?
Yeah, I think The book is basically, it compares the world of gaming versus business, right? So there's an anecdote about gaming, and then there's a business comparison and how it's exactly the same thing. And then there's a quest, like something to do at the end, right? Where you can kind of build up, those habits for yourself. Essentially, the entire book is about creating the right habits and leveling up from that perspective. Because in life, I mean, there's a wealth ladder concept that another entrepreneur, his name's Nathan Barry, he created it. And so I would argue that the first thing you want to do is you want to build the right habits. Obviously, you want to learn the right skills, and then maybe you start working for someone, right? That's what your parents want you to do, and eventually the next step is you might freelance somewhere, and then the next step after that is you might build an agency, right? Or rewinding a step, you might build a drop shipping business, and then you might build an e-commerce business where you have the inventory, and then you can move on to the next step, right? Where eventually you have like a platform business, you have a network effects business. Or you even have like a SpaceX or something like that. But the whole idea here is you're continuing level up, and it's all rooted within your habits first. Because if you don't have good habits, like you don't have the right foundation to level up to where you want to go.
Yeah. How much of kind of the leveling up and going from the platform business strategy is you're just practicing, like you're literally acquiring the skills and getting better and better, and you can go bigger and bigger from that, versus something else is at play?
Yeah, no, I think you constantly, one of the things, so one of our core values for the agency is growth, right? So you're constantly seeking growth, and you're constantly seeking how to improve, and then also improve, the world around you, right? And ultimately, at the end of the day, whatever's going on politically, like, that's how you add value to the world, and that's how you become successful. And so I think that's what it is. I mean, you create your own luck that way. I think it's, as long as you make sure that you're constantly optimizing yourself and you're iterating. No way you can't level. I just think there's no, like, if you have the right habits and you're hanging out with the right people, there's no way in my mind that you can't become the success that you want to become, right? So I just think everything I was told growing up in an Asian family, like your fate's kind of determined and all that. I'm just like, none of that makes sense. So a lot of the messaging, the way you were programmed growing up, I'm trying to unwind that programming.
Absolutely. You are one of the best marketers in the world. How would you say people who want to get better at marketing can go do that? Is it finding other people? Are there specific books, courses? Like what would your recommendations be?
Yeah, I guess I'll just share kind of my story around that. So I was working a dead-end job coming out of school. So this is when the financial crisis hit, and I was doing data entry. And my friend who was working at American Apparel at the time, now works at Airbnb. She was like, you should check out this digital marketing thing. Got an internship. And what happened with the internship, it was a free internship. And then what I found out afterwards is hilarious. But they hired a cohort of 12 interns, and they had us writing all these articles, right? And by the same time, they gave us all these digital marketing courses. So what I did was I would come back from work every day, and I would basically come back at 3 or 4 p.m. I'd come to work early, and I'd study till 12 a.m., right? So I'd go through all these courses, and I'd just go, whatever I picked up on, like, SEO, I just go deeper on it, go to Google. And anyway, what happened was for that internship, they were basically using us as content writers for free, right? And they had a bunch of content created, and they started ranking for all this stuff. So, but anyway, I kept going deeper. I went deeper on SEO, for example, and I actually ended up going to this blog called QuickSprout, which is at the time it was my podcast co-host Neil's. It was his blog, and what I did was I would try to email these people all the time because I'd have follow-up questions. Right, I learned something, so I was not only learning, I was asking follow-up questions, and eventually it got to the point where people like Neil or other people, whether it's me pestering them or whatever, they're like, dude, let's just get on the phone. So we got on the phone, and eventually with Neil, we ended up meeting at a Taco Bell in Orange County down in California. And that's how we became friends. But that same process, that template where I was just learning, and then I was also asking questions, or I was learning and trying to add value to people, kind of like how we talked about earlier. That's how I built my network around marketing, where I could continue to ask questions. Because the stuff you learn online, maybe it's like 90 to 95% of the stuff people are willing to share. The problem with marketing is if you talk about it, everyone starts to do it, and then your tactic becomes invalid, or your strategy. So you typically, just like with business and like these business or marketing, you want to hold 5 to 10% of the things and not share it. So ideally, that's why you build your network of smart business people or smart marketers.
Absolutely. Where can people go find the book?
Yeah, I mean, they can go to their favorite online retailer, just type in leveling up Eric Sue. Or, I mean, you can get a free chapter of the book, at levelingup.com.
Awesome. Where can people find you on the internet?
Yeah, there's me on Instagram at Eric OSIU. Same thing with Twitter at Eric OSIU. Those are probably the best two spots.
Awesome. Before we wrap up, I ask everyone the same two questions, and then you'll get a chance to ask me one. The first question is, what is the most important book you've ever read? And you can't say your own.
Yeah. Most important book. I thought about this a while back, but I would say the one that comes to mind first right now is The Hard Thing About Hard Things, just because the entire book is about struggle, and that's basically what life is. So.
Yeah, that's a fantastic book. Ben Horowitz from Andreessen Horowitz. Highly recommend that one as well. Second question is more fun. Aliens, are you a believer or a non-believer?
Believer for sure. Wasn't there just something that just came out about how there's like 300 million like galaxies or something?
300 million planets supposedly exist.
Oh.
I always joke and say when I was in middle school and high school, there was only 9. And we were in the big debate was is Pluto a planet or not? Now we're at 300 million. So I don't know how we went from 9 to 300 million, but that's where we are.
Well, how do we know anything? That's my whole thing, right? I would say still as human beings, we're fairly primitive right now. Like, how do we know, So.
Well, we probably don't, right? It's probably some estimated guess of like, oh, we could see, X number of square miles. Here's how many planets are in those square miles. So if you multiply that by the number of square miles we think are out there, like this is what it could be, right? So, some math like that, I'm sure.
Yep.
What question you got for me to wrap up?
I would say, where do you think? So Winklevoss twins are like it's going to go to 500K. Where do you think Bitcoin's going?
Oh, like over a long period of time? Because their whole thing was the 500K over time, right? Yeah. I don't think they put like a time frame on it. Yeah. I tend to think that they will look very, very bearish with only a 500K number on it over a long period of time. I'm talking 20, 30 years. I think for sure we'll see $1 million+ Bitcoin. The big question is, because I think you'd get to like about $1 million if you got to 2x the gold market cap. Right. So not unreasonable over a really long period of time. The number that I've put out publicly more short term is 100K by the end of next year. We'll see. Right. So far, so good.
Right.
We're trending in the right direction. But as we know, this thing has a mind of its own. It's super volatile and will rip people's faces off in both directions. So, we'll just wait till the end of December 2021 to see what happened.
I love it.
Awesome, Eric. Listen, thank you so much for doing this. I think people are really going to enjoy this. Highly recommend the book. Highly recommend them following you on social media. And we'll have to do it again in the future.
Thanks for having me.